These tomatoes have been in the ground outside for about a month, almost exactly a month, and this is where they've gotten to. Obviously in Montana, we have the problem of climate. It's cold here. It's been cold this last month, hasn't it? So, how'd we get here? How'd we get these nice tomatoes on these plants already? Well, I'm going to tell you how. We started in the greenhouse, and we'll go look there, but here's the trick. We have to provide warmth, and we have to provide light control. So, here we have warmth with the black plastic mulch. We have a raised bed. Black plastic, when the sun shines on it, heats up. And to control the light, we have these covers. So, what do you think we want? Full light or shaded when these tomatoes first go in? I'll bet people are thinking full sunlight because they're tomatoes. Well, actually, when we want the plants to establish roots, we want them to be a little shaded. Hence, we cover them both because we have cold nights in Montana and because when we have the shading, they put their energy into roots. And after they put their energy into roots, then we get nice big plants and nice early tomatoes. So there's the secret. The other thing we do with the tomatoes is that we stake them up off the ground. And the reason we do that is, number one, it's easier to pick the fruit, and number two, that's how we control disease. If the plants are up off the ground, they get better aeration and less disease. So the staking process will be done here in the next couple of days, but we have stakes every 2 tomatoes, and then we come through with string and crisscross, and we make a wall of tomatoes. Here we are in the broccoli field. Again, it's June 11th, and these broccoli have been in for about 6 weeks, which means that they went in pretty early, meaning they went in April, middle of April, which is a little too early to put things in Montana because remember that broccoli, if it experiences too many nights in a row below 40 degrees when it's a young plant, it'll do what broccoli naturally does, which is to send up a flower head, except instead of making the nice big broccoli flower heads that we like, it'll bolt and send up little ones. So don't plant your broccoli too early. Don't try this at home unless you're going to do what we do, which is to try and keep the temperatures warmer at night so the broccoli doesn't have those 40 or, God forbid, lower temperatures when it's at an early stage. Because let's go over here and look at what happens to broccoli when they have too cold a temperature. Remember about 3 weeks ago we had that cold, frosty couple of nights. Well, these nice leaves that were just expanding all had cold damage. Now, if the plants had been smaller and we'd gotten that kind of cold damage, we could have set them back to the point of not having good broccoli this year. Fortunately, these were nice big plants and it won't set them back. That has to do with our soil fertility and our living mulch. Here we have an example of the challenges of gardening in Montana. This broccoli succumbed to the cold, frosty evening that we had about 2 or 3 weeks ago when we had below freezing temperatures. Unfortunately, that broccoli leaf was a large one and the plant was a big plant, so that we didn't have fatal damage. If you had young broccoli plants out, however, and had this kind of damage, it would have set the broccoli plant back enough that you might not have a good crop. And as you see, these plants now are growing out of the injury, and the reason that they're doing so is because of the attention that we pay to soil fertility. Trying to maintain good soil fertility is the most important thing that a gardener can do, because basically soil fertility is at the root of it all. Bad joke, but indeed it's true. If you develop a good soil, plants will grow even under some of our harsh Montana growing conditions where we have unpredictable weather and cold temperatures. So how do we maintain soil fertility? The first thing we have to remember is that getting nutrients to plant roots, especially if you're using organic fertilizers, is a microbially controlled process. meaning that soil microorganisms are there and are involved. So how do we get our soil microorganisms to work for us? We provide them with an energy source, a carbon source, and we can use all kinds of organic residues, both dead residues like leaves or like straw, hay, those kinds of things, or living residues like this green clover here. And this is called a living mulch. There are many reasons that we use this living mulch. Number one, we get above ground organic matter. Because we have something living, it also has roots, and the roots are providing another kind of biomass and a below ground biomass and a source of carbon or energy to the soil microorganisms. There are a lot of other benefits too besides just the carbon addition or the organic matter addition. You see these flowers here that we have? That provides a nectar and pollen source for beneficial insects such as parasitic wasps or one of our better predators, which is syrphid fly, and they're busy laying their eggs out here in the crop, and then their young are munching on all of the bad guys that eat our crops. So the living mulch is providing nutrients in a slow release way to be broken down by our soil microbial community or our soil food web that then makes those nutrients available to the plant roots. And now I'll show you why that's important. The living mulch has provided a nice, steady, slow release nutrient source, and thus, even though we've had cold temperatures the last month, look at the size of this broccoli head we already have by the first week in June. This broccoli will probably be ready to harvest in another week and a half to 2 weeks, which is going to be some pretty early broccoli. We have a long, healthy row of broccoli, and in the middle between the broccoli rows, we have our living mulch looking lush and green. You can see that we also have some weeds, however. As we discussed earlier, this is important because we have blooming weeds that provide pollen and nectar sources for beneficial insects. We also have root diversity underground with different plants. We do try to keep the weeds in control, however, by mowing. I mow in between the rows when the weeds get too tall. These lovely, lush green, succulent peppers have been in for about 2 weeks, and while they look nice and succulent to us, they also look succulent to aphids. How many of you have had aphid problems on green bell peppers? What we have here is a raised bed devoted exclusively to weeds. And you say, why do you want to encourage weeds? Well, this raised bed is called my beetle bank, and it's my habitat for beneficial insects. And here we have a bee that's nectaring on a brassica flower. This is a wild mustard plant, and one of the few and earliest things in bloom here. And these bees later on are going to help pollinate our crops. Oops, we got a call here. Let's try line 1. Hello.
Hi.
Oh, good.
Great show. I have a question. Due to one thing or another, our veggie starts are still not in the ground, but they will be soon. And what can we do to help them flourish at this late stage of the season?
What kind of things are you going to put in?
Tomatoes, bell peppers, cilantro, onions, a pepper plant.
Okay. So except for the onions, we're looking at mainly warm season crops. So we want to see if we can modify the daytime and nighttime temperatures. So I would definitely at least consider covering them the way you saw my plants covered. And I think at Garden City Harvest Project also, at the peas farm, also they are covering with poly fabric. It's often called remay. And in a small garden, you can take that off during the day, and you can then get the sun in and cover it up at night. So I would at least do that, and you might consider using either a black plastic or weed mat. And in a small garden, weed mat's very nice because it lasts for years and years, and you don't have to get as many holes and things in it. So weed mat will get the temperatures up. You can control the temperatures at night, and you probably want to baby them with some fertilizer. Organically, a good option is to get fish fertilizer or the liquid fish fertilizer, and every time you water, mix in a little bit of the fertilizer. We call that fertigation.
Okay.
Okay? And for the onions, everything that you mentioned is a high nitrogen feeder, so the fish fertilizer is probably going to be a good option. With the onions, you might want to think about adding a little bit of phosphorus to get some nice big bulb size later. And I'm going to give you a little recipe here that seems to work very well. You want to get bone meal and put it in about a 5-gallon bucket, 1 pound of bone meal for 5 gallons of water, and then add about a cup of apple cider vinegar. The vinegar seems to make the bone meal as an acid, and it makes it more available quickly. And the bone meal usually takes months and months and months to be available, but if you do that, throw that in when you plant your onions, you should have good bulb size by this fall.
Great. Thank you, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for hanging in there and calling while we figured out our technical difficulties.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, those were some good questions. Not everybody has their gardens in early, so it's always an issue to try and figure out how to do things so we can get it more rapidly. Line 2.
Hi. Yes, I've been watching your show, and I called before, but there was a little mix-up. I don't know if you heard me, but I'm the one that wanted to know about the bugs. How do you get those good bugs to come to your garden and keep the bad bugs away? Or how do you control the bug population to get the ones you want?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, actually. The simple answer is create habitat and they will come. So what the good insects need is a good nectar and pollen source, so flowers blooming as long a period as possible from early spring, preferably before you get your crops in. I always have flowers in my greenhouses, so I get things going even before there's much growing in the vegetable field, and then we move transplants out with beneficial insects already on them. If you can't do that, if you can get flowers growing out in your vegetable garden, you will have the habitat mainly for the insects. The other thing they need, beside a pollen and nectar source, is to have shelter. Shelter and moisture. And you saw in my fields we have those living mulches. Dead mulches, or straw and leaves, will also work as well. Things like spiders and ground beetles basically think bare soil is a biological desert, and they won't come unless we provide the habitat for them. So the two main things, flowers, blooming as long as possible, and habitat in some kind of shelter, either a living or a dead mulch, or diversity of your cropping, keeping your plants together. We've been experimenting, for example, even with landscape plants, trees and shrubs, planting a cover underneath them so that we don't have a lot of bare soil showing. The second part of your question, how to encourage only the good guys and not the bad guys, that's a little harder. But what we usually find, or at least after 10 years in my system, I find that we do have aphids, but that they get to a certain level and then the beneficials get them under control. So we never have a pest-free system, but we always have them below a threshold level or a level at which they do any damage to the crop. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay, well, thank you very much. Yeah,
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it. I'll call back again.
Thanks for a good question.
Are you going to be on every week?
Well, I think we're going to try and get some very interesting different farms and gardens on the show. We're going to talk about native plants at some point here, and fruit trees as well. So if we get good response, yes, we'll be back every week.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That was another excellent question about how to encourage good guys as opposed to bad guys. Another part to that question is that you may have to help out the bad guys a little bit, or help out the good guys by getting the bad guys under control with botanical insecticides or with biological controls. Okay, actually there's one thing that we didn't get a call on that I want everybody to know. Speaking of bad guy insects, this is the week that codling moths are flying in Missoula and are ready to be taken care of on apple trees. Codling moth is the pest that is responsible for wormy apples. So, if you've had wormy apples in the past, or if you want to just avoid them, this week is the window. Now till this coming weekend is when you want to get your apples sprayed. The least toxic options for codling moth include rotenone and pyrethrin, mixes of the two, or if you can find it, ryanea. These are both botanical or plant-derived insecticides. The hard pesticide option would be malathion for codling moth at this point. If you get this window, you can really get away with the least toxic option, however. The other pest that it's the window to start treating for right now is western cherry fruit fly. And western cherry fruit fly is the pest that is the culprit behind wormy cherries, those little white maggots that you find at the base of lovely ripe sour cherries that we will be picking here in the next couple of weeks. And for western cherry fruit fly, it's a little more complicated than codling moth. There's a longer window to spray. But if you have a trap, a yellow sticky trap or a red ball sticky trap in your tree, every time you find the fly, which is a little bit smaller than the size of a house fly, with clear wings that have a black W on them, very distinctive. If you find more than 2 of those insects in your yellow sticky or red ball sticky traps in a week period, you need to spray until you stop seeing those or until the cherries turn red. And basically the same kinds of things, least toxic options for western cherry fruit fly as for codling moth. A rotenone pyrethrin or straight pyrethrin mix is the least toxic option for western cherry fruit fly on cherries. Malathion is the hard pesticide option on cherries for western cherry fruit fly. If you have any other questions, you can call us at the Extension Service. And thank you very much. We'll see you again next week.